Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Positive Proof Podcast. I'm your host, Parmis Najmi, and I'm so glad that you're here. If you want to listen to more episodes like this one on self-improvement, mindset, and wellness, go ahead and hit that follow button to join the family. I have been thinking a lot about the phrase high-value woman, and if you've spent even a few minutes on social media or in certain self-development circles, you might have seen it thrown around casually, usually alongside some cliche phrases about knowing your worth or loving yourself first, but that can feel vague and repetitive. So in today's episode, I want to drill down into 5 super specific markers that, in my view, keyword, my view, define what a high value woman looks like in action. Now, you might agree with some points and disagree with some others, so keep in mind we all have different perspectives, and that is okay to disagree with one another. I absolutely love learning about opposing perspectives because it challenges my own views, so I encourage you to be open-minded because I know a lot of people tend to take offense to topics like this. But I can tell you now that I certainly don't practice some of the points that I'll be mentioning here today, but that doesn't mean I'm not a high-value woman. It just means I have some room for improvement based on my own standards. Now, we're not just talking about generic self-improvement tips. This is about a particular mindset, a way of being, and even a way of interacting with the world. Yes, there are some universal principles like respect, love, and growth, but what we'll cover today goes way deeper than that. We're going to be talking about 1, financial independence, or at least the capacity for it, even if you choose to rely on a partner. Number 2, emotional composure, especially when it comes to anger and conflict. Number 3, unconditional respect for others, born out of understanding rather than judgment. Number 4, a crystal clear sense of desires and goals, so you move through life knowing what you want. And lastly, number 5, feminine energy, which might sound airy-fairy, but I promise we'll get concrete about what that can look like in real life. I know these points can be somewhat polarizing, especially the idea of not expressing anger too much or focusing on finances in a certain way. Some people might say, why shouldn't I express my anger? Isn't that authentic? Or why does it matter if I have my own money if I trust my partner? Very valid questions, for sure. But stick with me because I want to give you the context and nuance behind each principle. Ultimately, the goal isn't to say you must do all these things or you're not high value. No, not at all. Instead, it's an invitation to reflect on traits that many confident, self-actualized women embody. Traits that help them navigate life with poise and purpose. I also want this conversation to feel personal, like we're 2 friends talking honestly about what it takes to show up powerfully in today's world. Maybe some of these ideas will challenge you. Maybe you already practice a few of them. That's great. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and adapt as you see fit. So let's jump right in. We're going to start with what might be the most tangible topic on this list, having the capacity for financial independence, even if you never end up needing or using that independence in a literal way. Let's be real, money is one of those things that can influence almost every corner of our lives, from where we live to the kind of choices we feel free to make. So the first big trait of a high-value woman is that she either has her own money or has the capacity to earn it. This doesn't mean you're automatically rich or that you never split expenses with a partner, nor does it mean you can't happily rely on your husband or boyfriend for financial support if that's what both of you want. Rather, it's about knowing that if push comes to shove, you have the skills, confidence, or resources to stand on your own 2 feet. Now, why does this matter? You might be thinking, okay, so I'm a stay-at-home mom. Does that mean I'm not high value? Absolutely not. You can be a stay-at-home mom and still be high value if you know that you have the capability or the background, education, skill set, a passion that could generate income if necessary. It's the mindset that counts. The mindset of, I choose my financial situation rather than feeling trapped by it. If you rely on a man's money, it's because you both decided that's what works best for your family dynamic or personal goals, not because you have no other choice. So how do you build this capacity for independence? For some, it might mean pursuing a formal education or a specialized training program. For others, it might be starting a side hustle, building up a network of clients or customers, or simply saving and investing the money you already have in a way that grows over time. And if you're not sure where to start, I recommend picking a skill you're either passionate about or that's highly marketable, ideally both. Then devote an hour or two a day or as much as you can manage to strengthening that. Take it step by step. I've seen seen women go from zero to thriving careers in coding and design, teaching, content creation, all from their living rooms with literally kids running around. So the key is consistent effort and believing that it's worth the time, even if you're not going to use those skills to jump into the workforce immediately. Now, there's a big confidence piece to this. When you know you can earn your own money, you carry yourself so differently. You negotiate boundaries in relationships from a place of self-respect rather than fear. You don't have to cling to a situation that isn't serving you because you're not dependent on someone else's resources for survival. That emotional freedom often translates into a quiet, calm confidence in every other aspect of life. It also affects how you approach goals. If there's something you want, a vacation, a certification course, you can plan, budget, and execute without having to ask for permission or scramble to pull funds from somewhere else. A lot of high-value women do out-earn their partners, but this principle doesn't say you have to. Maybe your partner makes more and supports you in a comfortable lifestyle. That's totally fine. The point is that even if your partner is a top earner, you choose that arrangement. You're not stuck in it. If you ever decide you want out or you want something different, you have a path to do so. Now, financial independence often fits together with emotional independence. When you know you can provide for yourself, there's less likelihood of tolerating emotional or psychological manipulation just because you can't afford to leave. You are less likely to let someone treat you poorly. And that emotional independence leads to a healthier, more balanced relationship where both parties respect each other's contributions, financial or otherwise. So some practical tips. I want you to build a mini emergency fund. Even if you're relying on a shared bank account, try to create a small emergency fund in your own name. You can also invest in your learning. So take short courses online. There's Udemy, there's Coursera, there's Skillshare to sharpen your skill set. Another thing you can do is stay informed. So keep an eye on household finances or investments. You might not be the one paying the bills, but definitely know what's going on. And lastly, network. Talk to friends or mentors about possible side gigs or opportunities that fit your schedule. When you step into the world with the understanding that you're capable of earning your own money if needed, you radiate a kind of unshakable self-belief. It is the ultimate form of self-respect. It's a practical, grounded form of empowerment that seeps into every other corner of your life. Moving on to the second principle, which might feel a bit controversial because it touches on how we handle anger, a very real human emotion. And I actually struggle with this one the most, and I continue to work on it even today. Especially as a very expressive person, it can get super difficult for me to keep my composure when it comes to anger. Here's the thing. A high-value woman does get angry. We all do. But she doesn't explode or lose herself in her anger. She stays contained, composed, and in control. So let's unpack why this matters and how to practice it in a healthy way rather than just bottling things up or pretending everything's fine. A high-value woman understands that emotions are powerful tools, but how we express them can either build bridges or burn them down. Losing your temper, screaming, swearing, throwing insults, it often leads to regret and it undermines your influence. Meanwhile, staying calm, speaking in measured tones, and articulating what's bothering you with clarity, that demonstrates self-mastery. And self-mastery is magnetic. Think of it this way. If you're the kind of person who can address conflicts or disappointments without letting rage take over, people trust you more. They know you won't lash out unpredictably. That trust is currency in any type of relationship. Now, keeping your composure, it doesn't mean you're never going to express anger. It just means you choose the time, the place, and the tone. Maybe you feel disrespected by a coworker. Instead of snapping in a meeting, you wait until you can speak to them privately or involve HR if that's necessary. You keep your voice steady and you say, I want to talk to you about something that bothered me earlier. When you said XYZ, I felt disrespected. I'd like to understand your perspective and I'd like to share how it affected me. Or another example that I love thinking back to so I can learn from is a while ago, I was in the Starbucks drive-thru and someone completely butted in front of me and cut me off on purpose. I got so angry because I was in a rush. And so I rolled down my window, honked, and I cursed at them. Not my proudest moment, but I'm glad it happened because I noticed right after, wow, that is not who I want to be. So I learned from it. Is it easy? Not always. Anger can be overwhelming, but part of being a high value woman is having the discipline to pause, to breathe, and approach the situation with a solution-oriented mindset rather than venting raw emotion. A lot of people mistake composure for suppression, thinking that if you're not yelling, you're not being honest. But composure isn't about pushing your feelings down or invalidating them. It's about channeling them responsibly. If you find yourself struggling to keep calm, I want you to try these quick tips. Count to 5, pause for a few seconds before speaking, or name the emotion. In your mind, say, I'm feeling angry or hurt right now. Identifying the emotion can give you a bit of distance. Or you can write it down. You can jot your thoughts on a piece of paper or in your phone to get clarity before confronting the person. Or you can take a break. If you're about to lose it, excuse yourself. Say, I need a moment. Let's revisit this in a few minutes. When you can keep your cool under pressure, you stand out, especially in high stress environments. Colleagues are going to see you as someone who can handle leadership roles. Friends will turn to you when they need level-headed advice, and romantic partners will respect that they can't push your buttons so easily. And if they do, you'll address it firmly but calmly rather than retaliating with chaos. Over time, this composure becomes part of your reputation. People might say, she's so poised, or she's always so calm under pressure. And that's not to say you have no passion. It's about knowing how to direct that passion effectively. And honestly, it's a big stress reducer for you. Feeling anger is natural, but letting it run your life or your words, it can be so exhausting. And I'm telling you that from someone who struggles with keeping her anger composed, but still working on it. I want to acknowledge that different cultures have different norms around emotional expression, and some communities are more vocal. And that's not necessarily bad, but even in more expressive cultures, there's a difference between healthy, passionate expression and uncontrolled rage. The high-value approach is about respecting yourself and others enough to communicate in a constructive way, no matter the cultural setting. Think of composure as emotional elegance. You're not denying your feelings, but you're presenting them with a certain grace. And that grace is part of what sets you apart as a high-value woman. It demonstrates self-awareness, self-control, and respect for the people around you, even if you're calling them out. Remember, a well-placed, calmly stated boundary or correction often has a far greater impact than an explosive rant. Moving on to point number 3, we're going to address respect and non-judgment. A high-value woman has the confidence and emotional maturity to view other people with empathy rather than contempt or knee-jerk criticism. She understands that everyone's behavior is, at some level, an explanation of their circumstances or their upbringing and personal challenges. That doesn't mean she excuses bad behavior, no. It means she strives to understand before jumping to conclusions. We often judge others because we're insecure about ourselves or we've been socialized to pick at differences. But when you've done enough inner work, you stop needing to constantly compare or feel superior to anyone. Instead, you develop a calm curiosity, thinking maybe, I wonder what led them to act that way. Or they must be going through something that I don't fully understand. This attitude makes you more approachable and magnetic. People sense when they're in the presence of someone who won't shame them for their quirks or mistakes. They open up more readily, they trust you, and often become more thoughtful themselves. That's the ripple effect of a non-judgmental mindset. Now, non-judgment and respect don't require you to agree with everyone or condone harmful actions. You can hold someone accountable, say, for a hurtful remark or a serious wrongdoing without demeaning them as a human being. For instance, you might say, I believe what you did was wrong and here's why, instead of you're a terrible person. This approach keeps the focus on the behavior, not on labeling them entirely. And this is actually something that I worked on in my relationships when it came to conflict. For example, I used to say to my ex-boyfriend, you're not loving, you're not caring, blah, blah, blah. That wasn't very respectful on my part because he was doing a million other things that proved he was loving and caring. And it was probably in one of his behaviors that I did not like that made him come off as not caring and not loving. So instead of labeling him entirely over one behavior I disliked, it would have been nicer for me to say, I don't like when you do this because it doesn't make me feel loved or cared for. Now, I feel like I've mastered this and apply it to all aspects of my life, and it's truly made a difference in my now relationship. By separating actions from intrinsic worth, you leave the door open for learning or growth. And you'd be amazed at how often people respond positively when they sense they're not being personally attacked. You also maintain your own inner peace by not fueling resentment or superiority complexes. A high-value woman typically acknowledges that everyone is shaped by a variety of factors: family background, cultural norms, mental health challenges, past traumas, etc. So when she encounters someone who's being difficult, she remembers there is always more to the story. Maybe this doesn't change how she reacts, especially if she needs to protect herself, but it changes the energy with which she reacts. Let's say you have a coworker who's constantly negative. Instead of labeling them as toxic and gossiping about them, you might keep a healthy distance while also recognizing that their negativity could stem from personal struggles. You're not making excuses for them, but you're also not letting their negativity define your mood or drag you in a conflict. That is what's real emotional intelligence. One reason a high-value woman can be so non-judgmental is that she's secure in herself. She doesn't need to tear someone else down to feel good. She respects her own journey and knows everyone else is on their own path. And this kind of mindset only arises when you're content with who you are and comfortable in your own skin. If you catch yourself being overly judgmental, it can be a sign to do some self-reflection. Am I projecting my insecurities onto others? Ask yourself that. Some practical ways to practice non-judgment is ask questions. When you disagree, start with, help me understand, rather than why are you so wrong? Or reflect on your triggers. If a particular behavior really gets under your skin, pause and ask why. Is it something you dislike about yourself? Because most often people get irritated by the same things they don't like about themselves. Or if someone annoys you, imagine a time when you behaved similarly so you can feel some compassion. At the end of the day, a high-value woman sees the world as a complex combination of stories, each shaped by its own circumstances. She respects people's inherent worth, even if she must stand firmly against certain actions. And this balanced viewpoint, free from snap judgments, is both refreshing and so incredibly powerful. Now let's talk about clarity of desire and direction. A high-value woman knows what she wants, whether it's in her career, love life, friendships, or personal development.
Let's take a quick break.
Struggling to keep up with life and work because of ADHD? On the Learn to Thrive with ADHD podcast, I share practical strategies and mindset shifts to help you follow through, stay focused, and thrive. Think of it as having your own ADHD coach in your pocket. Listen on your favorite podcast app or visit learntothrivewithadhd.com/podcast.
Listen, she might not have every single detail mapped out, but she is not wandering aimlessly or waiting for someone else to define her path. When you have clarity on your desires, decisions become easier. Instead of agonizing over every opportunity, you can ask, does this align with what I truly want? If the answer is no, you move on. If it's yes, you commit wholeheartedly. And this kind of decisive energy is so attractive. People see that you're not adrift, hoping the world will hand you a direction. You're steering your own ship. Clarity also helps you communicate better. If you know exactly what you're looking for in a romantic relationship, say a committed partnership that leads to marriage, you can express that early on. No guesswork, no misunderstandings. The same goes for career goals. If you want to work in a certain industry or earn a specific position, you can craft your resume with that in mind. Knowing what you want doesn't mean you can't explore. If you're in your 20s, you might still be figuring things out, and that is completely okay. Exploring is an active process where you're testing possibilities, seeing what resonates, and learning about yourself. Indecision, on the other hand, is passively floating from one thing to the next with no intention behind it. And the difference is in the mindset. Exploration has purpose to gain clarity, whereas indecision is more of an aimless drift. Now, a high-value woman also recognizes that desires evolve. What you want at 25 may differ from what you want at 35 or 45. The key is to stay self-aware. If your aspirations change, you pivot intentionally rather than feeling guilty or confused. It's your life after all. You have every single right to change your mind. A high-value woman who knows what she wants also keeps promises to herself. If she says she's going to do something, she does it. If I say I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m., I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. because I respect myself enough to keep the promises that I make to myself. And I praise myself a lot on this because I always keep the promises that I make to myself. Now, clarity about your desires naturally ties into the confidence to ask for what you want. Whether it's in a boardroom negotiation or a conversation about household responsibilities, a high-value woman speaks up. She might say, I want to raise by Q2 because I've delivered on these projects. Or I want to spend Sunday afternoon on self-care, so I'll need your help watching the kids. She's not pushy or domineering. She's just explicit about her needs. The directness saves so much time and energy because instead of hoping your boss notices your hard work, you schedule a meeting and lay out your case. Instead of feeling resentful that your partner doesn't guess you need more help at home, you clearly communicate your expectations. It's respectful, it's fair, and it's honest. Now, something that can help is to create vision boards. It could be physical or it could be a digital collage of what you want your future to look like. Other people prefer journaling or simply setting mental milestones. The tool doesn't really matter. It's the act of articulating your desires that counts. When you see them in black and white, or color if you're making a collage, it becomes real. You can then break those desires down into actionable steps. For instance, if your goal is to own a home by 30, you might start saving a specific amount each month, researching property markets and talking to people who've been through the process. Or if your dream is to become a published author, you set aside time each day to write, join a writer's group, and research agents. Clarity in what you want leads to clarity in how you spend your time, which leads to real results. One thing you must know, though, is that a high-value woman is not only a woman who knows what she wants and has clear goals, but someone who is extremely passionate about her goals. A high-value woman leads life with passion. She might not maintain the same energy level daily. We have monthly menstrual cycles, but she is consistent when executing her plans because she knows that her goal is for the general good. People who know what they want are often perceived as leaders, sometimes without even trying. Friends might come to you for advice because they can sense you have direction, or employers see your determination and might offer more opportunities. Romantic partners feel more secure because they're not guessing about your intentions. In short, clarity creates a ripple effect that elevates nearly every sphere of your life. Of course, it's a journey. We're all works in progress, even me too. But the fundamental trait remains: a high-value woman is someone who takes the time to reflect, define, and pursue her desires. She does not apologize for wanting what she wants. She owns it. Last but not least, a high-value woman is in her feminine energy, a phrase that might sound abstract, so let's clarify what it actually means in everyday life. Feminine energy isn't about wearing pink or loving romantic comedies, though if you do, that's great. It's about creativity, receptivity, softness, qualities that exist in men too, but are often culturally associated with women. We all have both masculine and feminine energies within us, regardless of our gender. The masculine side is often linked to logic, structure, and doing, while the feminine side is about intuition, flow, and being. A high-value woman knows how to balance these energies. Keyword, balance. She can be decisive and assertive when needed, which are masculine traits, but she also knows the power of softness, empathy, and creating space for others, which are feminine traits. Now, what feminine energy looks like day to day, it could be, instead of brushing off praise or trying to do everything alone, she can gracefully accept kindness. She doesn't see receiving as a weakness. She understands it can be a gift to let others give. Or she tunes into her body, her emotions, and the vibe in the room. If she senses tension, she might gently bring it up or offer a comforting word. If she feels joy, she lets it radiate. Or nurturing her relationships. This doesn't mean mothering everyone, but it does mean checking in, offering support, and creating emotional warmth in her circles. She values connection. Or expressing softness without losing power. She can be kind, gentle, and empathetic while still maintaining strong boundaries and self-respect. Softness does not equate to being a pushover. Now, some people confuse femininity with passivity or weakness, but that's a gross misunderstanding. True feminine energy can be incredibly strong. Think about the protective instincts of a mother or the calm wisdom of a counselor. Those are forms of feminine power at work. A high-value woman isn't afraid to lean into that power when the situation calls for it. For example, if she's leading a team at work, she might do so in a more collaborative, emotionally intelligent style. She values each person's input. She fosters cooperation and acts as a guiding presence rather than an authoritarian figure. That is feminine leadership, and it can be so effective. Another aspect of feminine energy is self-care and sensuality. Feeling comfortable in your own body and taking time to indulge in experiences that awaken your senses. It could be a luxurious bath, a slow yoga practice, or wearing clothes that make you feel good. This has nothing to do with dressing for male attention, but it's about honoring your own body and its capacity for pleasure, for relaxation, for beauty. This level of self-care, it can really boost your confidence and well-being, which, in turn affects how you show up in the world. You exude a vibe of being in harmony with yourself, your mind, body, and spirit. One feature of feminine energy is receiving support, whether it's emotional, physical, or financial. Let's circle back to the first principle about having your own money. Even if you can stand on your own financially, there's a difference between independence and shutting people out. A high-value woman doesn't scoff at a partner who wants to pay for dinner sometimes or a friend who offers to help move furniture. She graciously accepts these gestures if they align with her comfort level. And by doing so, she allows others the joy of giving. She's not threatened by it because she doesn't equate receiving help with weakness. Another way to identify a high-value woman who's in her feminine energy is how she carries herself. She believes in herself and she will not allow anyone to treat her less. Such women have usually spend time working to be the best version of themselves by maintaining high self-esteem. Hence, they won't allow the words of anybody to put them down. If she needs to burn the bridge with such people, she will do it. And this is something I praise myself for. I walked away from my huge group of high school friends because I felt I was not receiving the standard level of respect I needed. Most people would find it too difficult to do this because of fear or loneliness, but if it wasn't for burning that bridge, I would not be here where I am today. Now, a high-value woman rarely complains because she recognizes that negativity is an energy drain that accomplishes very little. And I'm guilty of this. I complain sometimes, but I really do try my best to avoid it, and I'm working on it. A high-value woman doesn't deny that problems exist, because they do, and that's why we complain. Instead, she acknowledges them. She focuses on solutions rather than indulging in repeated negativity. Complaining can quickly become a habit that fosters a victim mindset, but a high-value woman refuses to sink into that cycle. She also knows that complaining repels people. Instead, she invests her energy in building constructive dialogue, seeking help when needed, or maintaining her composure and self-respect when facing those challenges. By channeling frustration into forward-looking action, she preserves her emotional balance and upholds an environment of positivity and respect for herself and those around her. And in doing so, she demonstrates the resilience, the resourcefulness, and optimism that define her as a woman of high value. Last thing I want to touch on about the femininity is, in a fast-paced world that often values hustle and competition, traits which are typically labeled as masculine, embracing feminine energy can be a breath of fresh air. It really reminds you to slow down, to listen more, to feel more, and to create a space for genuine connection. You can still hustle, but you do so in a way that honors your intuitive side. You let yourself rest. You consider the emotional implications of your decisions, and you welcome collaboration. Ultimately, a high-value woman sees her feminine energy as an asset, a source of emotional intelligence, empathy, creativity, and grace. She doesn't suppress it out of fear of appearing weak. Instead, she wields it confidently, understanding that it's part of what makes her a formidable presence in any room. So there you have it, 5 concrete markers of a high-value woman that go beyond the usual buzzwords. Remember, none of these traits say you have to be perfect 24/7. Everyone has off days and moments they're not proud of, like my drive-thru incident that I spoke about earlier. The point is that these markers define an overall approach to life. They're benchmarks for how you might aspire to show up day in and day out as you grow into the best version of yourself. So take a moment to think about which area resonates with you the most right now and ask yourself, is it the idea of building financial capacity? Or maybe you're intrigued by the concept of embracing more feminine energy in a world that often values hustle and grind. Pick one trait to focus on this week and challenge yourself to practice it consciously. Maybe that means setting aside time to update your resume, or pausing to breathe before you respond in anger, or simply letting yourself receive a kind of gesture from a partner or a friend. Being a high-value woman is as much a mindset as it is a set of behaviors. It's an ongoing journey of self-discovery, emotional intelligence, and intentional living. So let these principles guide you, but don't feel boxed in by them. Adapt them, mold them to fit your life and personality. But that is a wrap. I do hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, please leave a review. Your feedback means so much to me. The more people this podcast reaches, the bigger the positive impact we make. So I would love it if you could do that for me. Also, if you guys have any recommendations as to what you'd like me to talk about in future episodes, definitely let me know, because I'm 100% open to recording what you guys want to hear. And if you don't know yet, I do monthly giveaways where a random person will be selected from those of you who did leave a review. The written reviews can be done over on Apple Podcasts, and the ratings can be done on Spotify. Just send me a screenshot once you've done so and you'll be eligible to win. The winner will be announced on Instagram at Positive Proof Podcast. And if you want an extra entry into the giveaway, make sure to share this podcast or episode via socials and tag me at Parmis Najmi, and again at Positive Proof Podcast on Instagram. To everyone else, if you've made it this far, I appreciate you so much, and I can't wait to chat with you again in next week's episode. Lots of love, Parmis.